Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Solo Q. This week, I'm joined by guest Matt Simmons. How's it going,
Hey,
Matt?
it's going good.
Yeah, it's good to have you on, man. Obviously, you've been a regular for Friend Code in the past on my previous show. But before we get into here, I wanted to say, welcome. And for those who maybe aren't as familiar with you, give us a little bit of a, kind of like a background intro on kind of like what you do.
Yeah, so I run a YoVideoGames channel on YouTube, which is sort of the archival of streams for Maximilian dude. But also anything if I want to do on my own, such as like, I did like my own Smash Brothers style Sesame thing. A long time ago we used to do these sort of live action mixed in like skits with mixed in with tutorial for Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and other various games there. So, me and Max been doing that for a while, but yeah, and then I also have my own Twitch channel, which I don't know, assist me doom, twitch.tv/assist me doom. So yeah, but like, yeah, I basically, like, if anything, it's just probably most easily known. I am the YoVideoGames archivist, if anything.
Nice. I definitely remember the the assist me recording days, having back at like Max's whole apartment and stuff, shooting
Yeah.
some of that stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I told you at some point, but I like would always tell people who would like ask and like, yeah, the Doom from Assist Me. He was my roommate, or what at the time I was like, it was is my roommate, was my roommate. It's like, yeah, like I live with I live with Doom and stuff. Like, oh really? That's pretty cool and stuff. Like it was like people even are mutuals. There's so many mutuals friends that we had that when they like didn't know for whatever reason and would like they're probably mostly know us like through online. And then I would talk with them like, wait, you live with Simmons and stuff? Like, yeah, that's my roommate and stuff. They were like, what? So I was like, yeah, that was always a fun thing to have. It was like that being recognized, and then like anyone who ever came by and be like, "Oh, you're that guy who back in the day, like you're that guy from Game Trailers. You know, like that Final Boss. You're on that show with Final Bossman with Kyle Bossman." I was like, "Yeah," because we used to do skits. He used to do skits on that involved us. So
Yeah.
we get random people would walk up to us. I remember one time we were waiting to see a movie. It was Ben Moore and I were waiting to see a movie, and some random person came up and that they were like, "You're the guys from the Final Bossman show." And we're like, yeah." Like we're gonna like,
Wow.
yeah, sure. We do other stuff, but yeah, that's it. But yeah, it's been it's been a little while since I've had you on. Obviously, I was going through like my move and everything, so changing stuff,
Yeah.
and it's now I got this new thing going, so I was like, definitely need to get
Yeah,
Simmons
and
on.
and I think we were originally thinking of just talking something like, just more just sort of pie in the sky style, and then it kind of like this game came out, so it was kind of like, oh well, this is actually a good kind of like
Yeah,
thing to talk about, like because it feels more relevant and like more like tangible.
exactly. Like this whole thing's about like stuff like I'm kind of like passionate about. Sometimes like something will happen in a week and I want to talk about it with someone. Like for sure, I know people like see you and they expect like Monolith Soft and Xenoblade talk or something, and
Yeah, so
I was like, let's wait till there's probably maybe a direct happening sometime, and like we should maybe
well,
wait till that happens just to
so
be sure.
every Monday I stream a Monolith Soft game. I call it Monolith Soft Mondays. It's been a thing I've been doing for a couple of years. So like I'm very much into their stuff, but like and people ask me now, I'm like, what did their stuff? I'm like, you're not gonna see it right away because like if we go on their 10-year trajectory that they've been doing, it's kind of like now's not the time to really we're really gonna see something. However, I said hope springs eternal here. Um, you know, when there is a new system announced, whenever that ends up happening, I guarantee you they're going to be there because of the value they saw within launching within the first 12 months of a new system. So probably sooner than later, but but
Yeah.
yeah, like right now it's kind of like it's a little soon, guy.
Probably, yeah. Even if we get like the next direct, like it probably wouldn't be in it. But like, I wanted to be safe than sorry, and there's only so many times you can like speculate, and before people are like, okay, you've said like the same thing over and over. So I kind of want to like be sure that we didn't get like any new details, and it feels like there might be something soon. And then like after that, I'll definitely have you back
the,
on to
the
talk
the
about
the
speculation.
only thing that's new is that there is the official Xenoblade 3 art book is coming out April 1st in Japan. It's not a joke. Now it's actually larger than their last art book, and a lot of times, most of the time, even they actually will have lore relevant new details in that. However, these things never get translated into English.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we're going to be relying on the community if anything new pops up in there, and if anyone wanted to like know about anything about that. So it's like, well, we got this big art book coming out on the 1st of April, but that's kind of for a game that's already happened. So as far as that stuff goes, I mean, the nice thing is that actually there's actually a thing online where they're actually letting you give questions and comments to the development team,
Oh, that's
and
pretty cool.
they're gonna publish them. However, they're taking the questions anonymously, and they're only accepting them in Japanese. So bust out your
Ah,
translator.
there you go. Well, as you could probably guess by the footage here, like I mean, we'll be back at some point to talk Monolith Soft, but yes, this month did see the release of a new entry in the Prince of Persia series, The Lost Crown. Simmons, you just finished it. I reviewed
I
it
beat it, yeah.
for I was about to say game trailers, Easy Allies. Wow, because we were talking about game trailers earlier. I was like, oh man, now I'm in the wrong mindset. And I wanted to start there. So for this episode, I'm going to let you share your thoughts on how you felt the Lost Crown Prince of Persia redone as a Metroidvania, and then we're going to shift later into what franchises we think could maybe follow this blueprint of maybe
Mhm.
adopting the Metroidvania genre to revitalize maybe either a stagnating or long dormant franchise, like or maybe even like just a franchise that's still going that could maybe consider it. But let's start there. What were your thoughts on the Lost Crown now that you finished it?
Well, Lost Crown, I actually really enjoyed it. I kind of got lied to because
Oh,
chat likes to lie a lot. Because I was like, I was on a boss, and I was like, how close am I to the end of this? And like, you're about halfway. And I'm like, if I'm about halfway, this game's a bit too long. I wasn't halfway. I was very close to the end.
okay.
I was very close to the end. It was I don't know what they were smoking. Maybe they were talking about 100% run or something. But because then I was like, I don't know, man. Like I'm starting to feel a little bit of the cracks here. If this is really the halfway point, this might just because I do think a Metroidvania can be too long.
hmm
I truly do think that. But like it wasn't. It was I was right near the end, so that was fine. Like really like the only slight grievance I have, there was one boss in particular that you couldn't do anything but just avoid and wait for attacks, and it was really annoying. Because usually the bosses are like a healthy mix of like, avoid. You can parry this, you can't parry that. You kind of like can mix it up a little bit. But there's like one boss in particular where like you're not allowed to do anything except avoid. He has like one attack that one technically two that you can even parry.
All right. Let me.
And that was like the one thing where I was like, like that's a little frustrating because and they always say that because the boss fights are generally very cool and the combat in this game is excellent.
Yes.
Like having
Oh yeah.
the general combat feels so good in this game, and then to have a boss that sort of just like takes all that away. I was getting reminded of
Okay, now
Tales
I
of
think I know what you're
Arise.
talking about. So let me say this real quick for all our listeners and viewers. I should have said this at the top because this game is out. We both reviewed it. This is your one spoiler warning. I don't like prefacing everything with a spoiler warning. So we're gonna be free to talk about what we want. I mean, we won't unnecessarily spoil things if we like, oh, I just want to say this because it happened, But like, I think Simmons, you're okay to say what this boss is because I think I know what it is. I'm curious, but like, was this the
It's the big
archer?
muscle. It's the big muscle man.
Oh, okay, that one. All right.
The archer was getting there,
The
but
archer, yeah,
you
yeah.
could juggle him a couple points. Like he let you at least juggle him a little bit. He would break out of stuff easy, but the big muscle man on the boat was just kind of like, I can't do it. I just have to avoid this guy. All I'm doing is avoiding. So
Yeah, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. The archer one was like just put me in a different mindset. But I kind of like that while ultimately you knew what you wanted to get in and do, like the attack patterns were pretty varied between the bosses, and I kind of appreciated that. And I like how as you got your new skills, especially like your traversal abilities or special abilities, like being able to like grapple to somebody, use your like shadow clone to like leave like a spot to like teleport back. So they did a lot in the boss fights where a boss will do like a arena wide cleave, and like it
Mhm.
chases you, so you have to leave your shadow clone, keep running, and then teleport back to it to go safely through.
I,
Like yeah.
I like for some reason forgot about the shadow clones so much. Like, how am I
Uh
supposed to avoid this? How am I supposed to parry this? And then there'd be one guy in my chat always be like, shadow clone or clone? And I'm like, yeah, of course, right, clone, duh. So
but
that I had a couple moments, like I even got it on stream where like the hitbox was so had to be glitched. That just had to be glitched because like it was so unnatural. Like there would be times where like I would be getting hit out of thin air, like really far, like pretty good distance away from the boss, and I was like, "What? You saw that, right?" So, and I don't. It wasn't normal. It wasn't like an all the time occurrence. But I was like, "What the heck?" So there was like a very odd moment, one or here or there, where I would get like this really random like hitbox like
mm.
glitch, I guess I could call it, is the only thing I could say. But yeah.
So so talking about like the bosses, like we're talking about some combat here. I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on like the combat system, like just the core mechanics, how it felt, because I honestly felt it went a little bit like more advanced. For Metroidvanias with like combat, a lot
Yeah.
of them rely more like on RPG systems or like progression and upgrades, which are here. But this felt like it was drawing a little bit, from like the action series and action genre a little bit more, with
Yeah.
like like more advanced combos. Like even some of them you had to like go to that training guy, and in the tutorial, like, wait, you could do some of this stuff. I think it was a Joey First of Game Explain actually was the first one to point that out to me when we did the preview. He was like, did you go do that, dude? I'm like, no, my guy told me to move on, so I didn't waste my time. He's like, no, there was stuff they taught you that like isn't explained in the game. Like, what? And then like when I got the
I have
game
no
for
idea
review,
about any of
so
this.
like the down attack is like kind of like a Mortal Kombat sweep, but with your sword. It will
Yeah.
like flip guys up into like the air, like they'll trip them
Oh
up.
yeah, 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 your
Yeah,
launcher
yeah, you
basically.
have like the launcher, and then like they have, it shows you more advanced combos, not quite like canceling level, but they like showed you how to like do like advanced air dash combos where like you can keep your like combo going by extending your range. I didn't really
Yes.
use any of this in effect, but anyway, the point is it's pretty advanced in my opinion. What did you think about the combat system?
Well, first of all, it had a parry, and I think every
Hmm.
real time action game that has a parry is a plus in my book. Like parries make everything better. Absolutely love that. It was very, it felt very good for the most part. Again, like my biggest grievances come when you have this combo system. You can do all this cool stuff. You can't do any of that on a boss. And there was only one boss I feel like where that was completely, there is nothing you can do. Like some of the bosses are big. So like obviously you're not going to be juggling them up in the air or whatever. That'll be kind of interesting. It'd be kind of funny if you could. But no, I yeah, like for me, it's like this drove me nuts with like almost any game recently. Like I was saying, like even like Tales of Arise kind of drove me nuts with the fact that it's like you can do all this cool stuff. You can't do anything on a boss, any boss. And so that drove me away from that game at the 50% mark. But like just yeah, I like the fact that they kind of have this slight character action fighting game mechanic where it's like launcher to follow up, and then you can do air juggles or delay stuff in the air, sort of keep them up. So you kind of like if it's just you and one enemy, you could kind of see you almost like have a mini game of your in your head of just like how long can I keep this person like suspended in the air just taking damage or whatever. So that's actually just really fun. It feels great. There was an interesting thing where like you couldn't parry behind you. Like if something is attacking from behind
Hmm.
you, you just hit it. You have to actually position yourself, which not a big deal when the game is left and right, but it was kind of it does lead to an interesting thing where it's like you can't just like be wailing on someone. Someone comes up to hit you behind, and you can just tap the parry button and just like get away from me, and just keep wailing. Like you actually do have to position yourself. So there's a little bit more of a I guess nuance, or just I'm not gonna let you get away with everything. And like
Yeah.
certain character action games are kind of just like if you're good at pairing or you just do this, you could just juggle things infinitely, and you don't even have to worry about your back being exposed or whatever. So
They did have a.
um
They definitely. I went through accessibility stuff. They had an option that lets you like just auto target correctly No matter like
Mm.
when you hit attack, your attack will always go towards an enemy because yeah, without that you need to your positioning mattered. You had to be facing the right way for attacks, for parries. But if you didn't want to worry about that, there was something in accessibility, and that's something else I want to like. I don't know if you really messed around with that, but like they had a bunch of different options for this game, and I think obviously their
Mhm.
accessibility stuff, but there's also like the guided versus kind of like the non-guided mode for like where objectives
Right.
appeared, and there was also the difficulty. There were presets, but then you could go in and customize those to your like heart's content,
Oh,
which was
did they
pretty
have a
there was a
customization?
custom difficulty setting where you could go to any of the presets as a starting point, and every single element of the difficulty was basically a slider or an on-off button. Like enemy HP, increase, decrease, your damage, increase, decrease, your health, whatever. Like
Mm.
your super meter, do you lose it if you take damage or no? And like there was like parry window. You can make the parry and dodge windows longer or shorter. They really gave you a good amount of options, and I kind of like really appreciated that. So,
Wow, I actually don't
yeah,
remember. I don't remember seeing that. It's like the first time of course, I only remember this being in Xenoblade 2 DLC, and it was the last time I remember seeing a very specific difficulty slider for like your health, enemy health, meter, or like meter gain, meter loss, stuff like that. Like wow, like I didn't even know that was even an option. I did see how the difficulties had like they basically very clearly spelled out for you what
yeah.
damage 1.5, damage 1.0, stuff like that. I thought that was a very good
I
feature for it. So
Yeah, even if there were, I mean, I really wish it'd be more. This would be standard on more games. This type of difficulty customization, but at the very least, I do feel like difficulty should kind of like show you what's being changed specifically, so that even doing that was like an improvement over most games difficulties, where it's like this is meant for combat veterans. This is meant if you want to like enjoy the story. It's like cool, but what are you really changing? Like you don't know until you play, so it's kind
mhm.
of like nice. But since you didn't really get to like mess with that, but you did seems like you were aware of like the guided versus non-guided
Oh
mode in
yeah,
terms of this
which
being with for exploration and discovery in a Metroidvania.
there's there's one thing where it's like you either gonna love it or hate it. And there's a point in the game where it basically says to progress the story, you need to go find two more abilities.
Hmm.
And it's vague. Because I was playing on non-guided. I was playing on whatever. I'm like, oh well, I'll just that moment is a little bit of a sort of like pace killer. Not because necessarily, oh, you got to go find two items, because you don't really have any clue where they are. There's really nothing telling you which direction to go in. And I actually I went the wrong direction multiple times. I went to places that were beyond
Oh
those
yeah,
abilities. Like when I needed to find the two abilities to open like the seal,
yeah.
which is that's actually more like the midpoint. I ended up on the mountain, which is
Oh okay, you'd went
which
up
is
there.
the last area of the game, and I'm like I'm in the complete wrong area, completely wrong area. So um there it got a little bit like man, I don't know where to go, and it took a while to start off like, and that's kind of part of the fun of a Metroidvania is being lost and not knowing where to go. But I would say, like generally speaking, up to that point, and even after that point, there's a sort of like wink nudge to where you should be going. It feels like. So it was almost weird to have a game go from like, yeah, it's a Metroidvania, but we have a story and characters, we're kind of following a plot line. And then we're like, no, now it's true Metroidvania, like,
Yeah.
no info, like, time to wander aimlessly. And then it goes back to being sort of like paced more cinematically, where it's like, this is where you should be going.
Yeah, it was definitely structured that way where it felt like there were like three parts of this game in terms of like the degree of freedom or Metroidvania-ness, if you want to like explain like, a little bit more like training wheels style than like completely open and like the refined version. I will say for that part, I something did give me a clue, and I wasn't playing on guided. I didn't use guided at all for this. There is an NPC. It might have been this. There was an NPC in the hub area. The little girl who sells you the
Hmm.
maps, but she also sells hints in the hub. So I
Yeah.
think for your current objective, she will like. I think she told me like she heard about something in a zone, and so she gave me like the area where it was one of them was going to be, and
Mm.
like that's it.
I resisted.
So yeah, like there is that, but I mean, yeah, like it's like that balancing act of, do I put markers up? Is it clear that I'm supposed to interact with an NPC? Because like in RPGs, it's like you will learn as you play more RPGs. Talk to NPCs. Talk to NPCs. If you don't know what to do, you talk to characters, like, or review documents.
Yeah.
Like look at something you have, or talk to somebody, because like you're just missing a clue that just you didn't need restated. So does that, like, work in a Metroidvania or not? Is always, I think, a balancing act of, do you give players too much information? Do you give them just enough, or did you, not give
Well, the
them
nice
any?
thing, the nice thing is you have to pay for it, even though it's like a nothing amount of money. So it's kind of like, look, if you want a hint, you can literally pay for a hint. Like you're not going to accidentally stumble upon it, or
Yeah,
like be like, oh man, I wish this NPC didn't just blabber out the answer. I wanted to like discover it on my own. You can do that, because if you want the hint, you're going to have to literally fork over money for it. So I think I think that was the smartest thing to do, was just kind
yeah,
of like put it behind, like it's Link to the Past, put it behind the fortune teller.
exactly. I
I
would
have no
say,
idea how useful they were. I've never used them either.
yeah, I would say, like, especially in the early goings, like economy is a little bit tight, if you're going for like a lot of upgrades, and which ones
Mhm.
you can pick. So I do think, like, earlier on in the game, paying for a clue, it's like, it's not the most expensive thing, but it like might mean like, oh, I'm saving up for this weapon. I'm not sure if what's coming up next. Do I burn this for this clue? And oops, I came to a new boss, and like I didn't have enough for the weapon in time, or so I'm gonna have to like try it. Maybe I didn't have,
Yeah,
yeah, that
it doesn't
decision
have
making.
the modern day. I think someone brought it up. It doesn't have the modern game equivalent of like Aloy talking to herself. I should really go up on there.
Oh
There's something
gosh,
there,
yeah,
or like, Dad, there's a thing over there. We should go check it
yeah,
out. Like,
Kratos and Atreus.
yeah,
It's like,
I mean, heck, even Minish Cap did that too, which actually is why Minish Cap was not really one of my favorites, because like the darn hat would literally be like, usually like we're in a room, like, door's locked. Look under those pots. There's probably a key. I'm like, just play the game for me, hat. So
yeah, I honestly felt like, I mean, you can get, obviously you can turn on guided mode, you can get the information you want, but playing it without any of those aids, and just paying for like a clue or two, I felt like it was very rewarding in terms of figuring out, like it still felt like I felt a great sense of exploration. It felt very satisfying to uncover where I needed to go, and I didn't really feel overwhelmed, and I didn't feel like I was going. It didn't let me go too far in wrong directions for too long, I think, which is a
right,
very
no, like
a good thing.
there was never this point where it was like, well, there was one point where I actually got through an area I was not supposed to get through with the grapple hook, let's call it. And luckily they put like multiple barriers
Hmm.
in the way. So like I got past an area you're not supposed to get past, without the grapple hook, but I got through it anyways. And that was just because of like basically literally a hitbox glitch. Like a thorn did not register a hit when it should have. And I was able to jump. I was able to jump off of a dangerous area and dash forward. But like I got there. I'm like, I am not supposed to be here. Like it became very clear, right past that point. I'm like, no, I'm definitely not supposed to be here right now.
I mean, there's a history of Metroidvanias, and glitching and stuff, and getting to places maybe you shouldn't be,
I can see that being a thing where like because Dread absolutely took into account sequence breaking. And even had like unique boss animations for sequence
Yeah,
breakers.
that was
Um,
pretty cool.
I don't think this game is made with sequence breaking in mind.
I
Since I kind of accidentally sequence broke an area.
I don't
Um,
think it is either. There was one person who said something early on about, this is the intended way up, something like that. I forget the exact wording, but it was something like, meet you at the spot, you're supposed to go this way. And I was like, oh, are there gonna be like intended sequence break stuff? And I really didn't came across anything like that. The one thing you had your like bug there. The one kind of bug moment for me was trying to solve those, those rooms where there's like a puzzle in it, and when you figure out what to do, a chest appears, and like it's like they have like numbered symbols. Basically, it's
mm,
part of a larger meta puzzle. It's the one in the like down, like in one of the depths areas, and it's like two snake stone things that trigger and try
mm,
and crush you horizontally. and I was trying to figure out what to do, and I was using the slide to go under them in this really narrow gap,
Mm.
and it kept making me slide to the edge, and I clipped through the wall and fell out of bounds, and like felt like it just respawned me, like it treated me like I fell into a bottomless pit, and I was like, oh, and I could repeat it over and over again, which is kind of funny, and I was like, can I get anywhere with this? And like, nah, it just kept going to nowhere. But that was like my one glitch was like, oh, interesting. And I was like, but that's not how you solve the puzzle. But yeah, to your point, I don't think they really intended for any of that type of
Yeah.
stuff.
And I know that's kind of a big deal for a lot of, speedrunners or just sort of a lot of people who enjoy Metroidvanias in general. I think a lot of them do enjoy seeing how far they can get with secrets breaking. So this game's not really, it doesn't feel like it's meant for that at all.
No.
But to me, it's not really a detriment to the game because the game is a very well put together, honestly. It is a really good, well put together Metroidvania. I think I enjoyed this more than Dread. And I think that's because because Dread's cool and Dread has a parry, but the more visceral, in your face, combo heavy combat felt really, really cool.
L-
Um,
yeah. Let me ask you about this because you're married to Dread and combat, and we talked a lot about the combat, and you made it clear you like Prince of Persia combat. The two, I mean, there's two things. I'll ask about this first. There are two holdovers from Prince of Persia. So like, is this still even a Prince of Persia game? Like is there still
mhm.
DNA in there? And one of the things that's definitely still there is the platforming. And I wanted to ask you about how you felt about the platforming and the traversal mechanics, especially with some of those more like challenge environments with like, lots of like you're supposed to survive lots of spikes and everything. And then like later on, there's ones where like you have to like hug walls, like the ceilings, and there's no ground.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, did you like that type of stuff? Did you like
I
that type of
liked
platformer?
it, and this is gonna sound so self-bragging. It wasn't really difficult because I played Celeste. And it felt like Celeste was a major inspiration for a lot of parts of this game, and Celeste is significantly more difficult. And you're doing basically the exact same things in Celeste with like the wall jumping and the air dashing and whatever. So it's kind of like, okay, if you've beaten Celeste, you're not even going to think about the platforming in this game at all. It's gonna like you're just gonna kind of like autopilot through it. If you haven't played Celeste or you haven't beaten Celeste, it's maybe like almost like a good primer for some of those like really kind of like
Yeah.
obscenely hard indie platformers that they just relish in being overtly difficult. Um, so yeah, like again, like the Celeste Super Meat Boy kind of style of platforming. You could definitely feel the inspiration there, especially like you said with the wall hugging and the dashing, where it's like you go down and up and back, and kind of like you make like these almost like horseshoes or U-turns in the air. Um, there was a couple times, but it was also nice because like every time I technically would fail at a platforming section, and the hardest ones were getting the Xerxes coins, and that led to a couple frustration moments where like all this and it was just for a darn Xerxes coin. And those were the hardest platforming challenges. So there almost was like a little bit of frustration that I was like, oh man, they're really turning up the heat. No, it's you're doing an optional thing for a Xerxes coin that you're never going to use. I'm like, wow. But
Well,
um
they were used for the accessory, the amulet upgrades after a
so
certain point,
they
right?
they
Or
they started to
was
be
it the hidden
used.
shop currency? I keep forgetting which it
It's
was.
both.
Okay.
So there's the hidden shop, and then they eventually started to be used for item and armor and weapon upgrades.
Yeah.
So eventually, maybe not weapons. I think maybe only ingots were used for weapon upgrades, and those
Yeah,
were
the
really hard to
ingots
find.
were,
I could not find more than 3 of those the whole game.
Oh, really?
Um,
I got my swords fully upgraded, and I got the bow close to fully upgraded. Yeah, and I
it's
upgraded
funny
most of
because
the amulets.
I got stuck wandering around so much, and like it was weird how I never really found like there's a couple must just be a couple key little spots like just magically never found the ingot. So
Well, did you do any of the so going like real quick with the like platforming? Did you do like the bell? Not like they look like like bells with chains with like spikes. It's like this dude near like the top zone area. He has a special challenge for you. It's like you can't touch the ground, and you have to collect these 3 things. And all these spiked like moving platforms with chains.
if
And like you have to get 3 of them, and it was probably like it's optional. It is optional, and you're right that a lot of the hardest stuff is gated behind optional. There's that, and then there's the one room with a bunch of like spinning spikes that it pulls a fucking Resident Evil the movie moment where
Oh,
the
really?
lasers fake you out.
No,
It's like
I did that one.
yeah,
I
they
did
fake you
that
out with
one.
the spikes. I was like, God damn it.
Yes, I did do that one. There was an NPC who crashed my game, and apparently he's notorious for this. And it is up in the sort of top left area where he's talking about like thieves stole the moon or something. He's trying to get the moon back.
No, that's a
He
different
actually
one. Yeah.
he actually hard crashes the game.
Oh, okay.
And he hard crashed my game, so I just didn't go back and talk to him. Some people say you can sort of like mash pause while talking to him to like get through the, I don't know, I didn't go back and do it, but because like, well, I saw credits roll and I was like, okay, cool. I haven't gone back,
Gotcha. Yeah, this
you
area
know.
looked like the casing, like the metal casing around, like for a bell that like a big bell that
Mhm.
rings, and like they have like chains to another part of them. There's a part in the west area that has these similar looking things earlier that you used to traverse up like a
Mhm.
spot. And these are just the same things. They just have like spikes all over them. So like, and they're moving, and they only move when you touch a part of them. And they have very narrow spots that you can actually be safe on. So you kind of got to like
Yeah,
spam
I
like
know what you're talking about.
jump dash. And like when they're moving at different rates, your air dash, like you can't just like, you have to like
Mhm.
lead a little bit. And then you got like the grapple thing. It's and like you have very narrow windows to thread through. It was kind of annoying. It took a little while, but like
No,
it
yeah,
was
I remember this area.
yeah, it was completely
I do.
optional. And but yeah, I guess like you talked about like how like you maybe if you're a veteran it's a little bit easy. I definitely think they accounted for people who maybe aren't into this because there is one of their options is for required platforming segments, you can just skip them. A portal will appear and safely teleport you to the other side if you just don't like it for whatever reason. But so
Interesting.
they did count for that. But my question to you, Simmons, is besides like the difficulty, do you think the platforming felt good though? Did you like how the mechanics
Yeah,
handled how the
yeah.
your character Sargon handled? Yeah.
The only thing that was frustrating was like knowing there's a double jump there somewhere, and you don't get the double jump till way later into the game.
Yep.
So there was a lot of like, when am I gonna get a double jump? Because like honestly, once because you get the air dash, I feel
Very
early.
early. Yeah.
So you have the air dash with you for a long time, and then there finally comes the moments where like because you can like Mega Man X, up walls all over the place, but then you get to those points where it's like you need the double jump, and the double jump doesn't come for a very long time. So it's like it is a to quote the Weeb Bible here, it feels like the chains, Rock Lee taking off his weights here, when you get the double jump, because you feel like a god with your traversal mechanics once you've actually acquired the double jump. So like at that point it was, and then the grapple on top of it was almost just kind of like, oh my god, it's just icing. But
Yeah.
like once you have the double jump, you feel like there is no more obstacles. You've become the one you've begun to see, you've begun to believe. So you start feeling almost like Neo in a way, where it's like there is nothing that I can't get over or through or past once you have that double jump. So um so so yeah, like that in that sense, like it actually did feel good. And that's like kind of the other thing too, is that it's something very hard. It's something that it sounds so obvious, but in gaming, you almost get shocked at how much it doesn't happen, and that's feel of and response timing, especially response timing, where does the button press activate the nanosecond you press the button kind of thing. Is the input delay, stuff like that, like hit boxes, hurt boxes. Like these are things you would think are just like, well, of course you got to have them. Like, but like so many games just kind of don't. And it's really kind of interesting in a way, because Prince of Persia started out as basically what is called now a cinematic platformer. It is the granddaddy of cinematic platformers, where like even Jordan Mechner said like he had to be like convinced and talked into adding sword combat, because he was originally not going to have any combat in the first game. But it's like this is a game like Flashback, out of this world, or I think it was it Bloodthorn by Blizzard. And if those games are too old for people, Limbo, Planet of Lana, like it's a cinematic platformer style. So it was interesting how this used to be a this was the granddaddy of a very specific type of platforming genre. Now it's a Metroidvania. And because it's a Metroidvania, it wasn't really like trying to like keep ties so much to the old style. Like stylistically in a way, like yes, like thematically it is, but like it's a crazy Metroidvania with almost indie platformer levels of platforming, with the like I said, with all the weird, crazy horseshoes and midair stuff, and double jump, air dash, grapple hooking, which just wouldn't have even been physically possible on an Apple II. But so it's kind of a weird thing, not a weird thing, but kind of a cool thing how it started as one thing and a granddaddy of a subgenre that's still going to this day. But now it's testing the waters in a different genre that it wasn't previously a part of.
Yeah.
So
That feels like we can make a good segue into the next main topic, which is what other franchises can maybe do that. But before we do, I do want to ask you like one last thing about this, because you were kind of like referencing like the history of this series, how it started off as one thing, it's evolved. One thing that it did do over a decade ago, when it had its kind of like second resurgence, was with the Sands of Time trilogy, was introducing like the time manipulation mechanics.
yeah.
And there is a hint of that in the Lost Crown. But how did you feel like it had, it captured that well enough? Do you think it could have done more? Because it was really like destroying like those purple orbs to make things. There was like the whole narrative was around weird things going on with time. Like a boss fight, like narratively weaves that in. And then there is like your shadow clone and like manipulating reality for like platforming, but like it's not really time manipulation per se.
Right.
It's like dimensional manipulation. It's kind of like the thing they're doing here. So like there is those three statue challenges where you send 3 clones of yourself through to like trying to do that. But and there's a timer. But like, yeah, did you really think they were trying to bring forward the time DNA, or do you think they were maybe trying to do something different with this? And do you want to see more time related mechanics in this, or were you fine?
That would be the interesting question for the most interesting question for the dev team, I think, which is there's no rewind time ability, which the Sands of Time really kind of brought forward. And however, there is the villain who has the rewind ability.
Yep.
So you're fighting against you, and I wonder if that was like a conscious decision where it's like, no, you're going to be seeing it from the other end. Now you're going to have to fight against a rival who has it and you don't. Maybe they're just like, we wanted to see what it was like from the other end. Or part of me almost wonders if like, I think Braid has it with a rewind ability. But like, I part of me wonders if they were like, it breaks the game too much, or it makes things too easy, or if there was something somewhere along the way that having more actual time manipulation powers broke the level design in some way. There's a part of me that's curious to see if that was part of it, or if like the way they were designing the levels was just too easily exploitable with time manipulation mechanics.
Maybe. And I
So
like, yeah, you're probably right.
maybe it just came down to something like, well, either one or two things. Either you give the rewind ability, which nullifies most of the abilities you've gained, and that feels bad, rather than like using everything you've learned. You end up basically just replacing everything you've learned with one ability, one god tier ability. Or maybe they're like, we have all these platforming challenges with these specific things in mind, but you can break it so easily with a rewind or a fast forward or something, right? So maybe like, I wonder if it was either game breaking, or if they just basically felt like it rewind and fast forward just would nullify too many other abilities, to the point of like, why did we have them?
Yeah,
So
I definitely see like that challenge, especially in a 2D environment where they had been doing it in 3D before, where I think there's more, physical variables to account for that makes it not as, game breaking perhaps. Also, like I thought if they were going to do it, like your clone ability, I thought, oh, it's going to literally repeat what you do or something, right? It's like, oh, it only to some extent it does. It doesn't fully mimic what you did. And I could see like maybe why, because there are other like games that are coming out or have come out that do like that. You do something in one time and then you send out another version of yourself and then you merge them all together and see if you solve like the level or whatever. I could see how that might have been like too much for some people to handle. It's like, okay, it's a Metroidvania and all these fights, boss fights and puzzles are revolve around like having to think like that constantly. That might have been like too much and like maybe destroyed the pacing and exactly what you said, concerns of, oh, now this is too game breaking. Like, why do the other powers, especially if you keep your other powers, like how do we even make things challenging? So I think you're kind of like right that I think they looked at it hard and they said, you know what, this is how we think this is a better path forward. And honestly, and like I don't think it needed to have like, you know, rewind mechanics. Like we already had games that did that. They're trying
Mhm.
something a little bit new, but it's like kind of like nudging you, like, hey, you do remember those? Like the boss has it, you know, the villain has it, and like, oh, there's time stuff here, but like
Yeah.
I feel like this was the right choice.
You also like when you die, you go. I mean, if you die from like a fight or whatever, like full life zero, you go back to like wherever your last tree was.
Mhm.
There's a lot of trees checkpoints in the game, a lot. And then if it's a platforming thing and you like say you fall off a cliff or into whatever, it zips you right back to the start of wherever that was. So it almost doesn't it doesn't really matter because like especially on the platforming side of things, they just put you right back to the last ledge you were standing on. If you you know fall down a platform, and if it's combat or something related, you go back to a tree, which is hardly even a penalty.
Yeah.
So it almost kind of felt like it would feel with how generous they were with checkpointing, it would feel almost kind of redundant to have. Well, I need a rewind. No, you don't. Like there's nothing this great, like there's nothing that's just so long that you need a rewind ability because like perfecting even for a Xerxes coin, it's going to take you 20 seconds, 30 seconds at tops, to get you know some of the harder to reach coins using all your abilities. But like I don't know, like I guess in a way like the way the game is designed, you don't miss it.
Yeah.
Like you know, even though I know it's been kind of a staple of the franchise, you actually don't miss it.
Yeah. I agree with you. That's kind of like where I rest. Like I think with like, you know, the advancements as you said, like it would feel a bit redundant. And I think it, you know, if they were gonna do it, they'd have to think of something new and different. And they already were doing something new and different with that. You know, save it for the sequel, maybe. You know, like they can think of some new stuff for that. But you know, it's Prince of Persia. It's back. I think it's in a good place. I don't know what we don't know its sales just yet, but critically, you know, it definitely
Yeah,
did was very well received. And even if it doesn't like sell like a huge amounts, I hope they don't like abandon this because this is a very good blueprint for them to keep going forward because Prince of Persia was like on life support. We had like the
yeah.
remake that, you know, is like in development hell limbo because, you
You've
know,
got
of the
Metroid Prime Ford.
yeah.
Speaking of Metroids, the
Yeah.
exact same thing happened to it.
But with like with Prince of Persia specifically, it's like what else were you gonna like get? Like, you know, Assassin's Creed kind of like is the spiritual successor to Prince of Persia. It's like you're not gonna make a Prince of Persia game that's just like Assassin's Creed from the same company. It's like they already make Assassin's Creed. They just went through
Mhm.
Mirage trying to give you back old Assassin's Creed. It's like there's like where does Prince of Persia go? And like this was their answer, and I think this is a very good answer. So our next big topic here, the last topic is seeing how Prince of Persia, you know, kind of reinvented itself while still like embracing some of its heritage. What other franchises do you think could take this route? And we'll stick to specifically
Mm.
like going the Metroidvania route because we are seeing it in the last like 3, 4 years, like probably 5 years, we've seen a huge resurgence of Metroidvanias.
Yeah.
There's almost too many coming out. But at the same time, I think what will help you stand out is if you are an established franchise, you're going to get more eyeballs on you. So,
Yeah.
have you thought about any like series that you're like, man, they even had either haven't had an update, you know, a new entry in
Mhm.
forever, or you know, they, you know, just like the last ones didn't do very well and they could use a change of
Yeah.
direction? Any come to mind that you'd like to see?
Well, it's interesting to say that because like this game kind of weirdly got really panned when it was first announced. People were like really upset. Part of that could just be because people were kind of expecting the remake and was like it feels like what happened to the remake? Now we're just doing like
Yeah,
this smaller budget duty, and which there is sort of like a sort of frustration that comes with like there is just a subsection especially honestly with people who mostly only say you only play Ubisoft or EA or Activision games. You don't see 2D games from them too much. I mean, yeah, Child of Light exists and Rayman Legends exists, but like hardly anyone like played that honestly. Like there's a reason they don't make they made this instead of Rayman, which is not just throw shade at Rayman. It's just kind of like the market kind of decided like kind of how they were kind of they felt meh on 2D Metroidvanias, but like there's I hope the critical acclaim can sort of translate a little bit towards good sales because honestly what this industry needs more is smaller scale,
Yes.
smaller budget, but like tightly, designed great experiences like Lost Crown. We don't need another massive budget giant, Ubisoft Tower, open world game that's going to cost so much. It's not even, and I'm not even trying to knock open world games. I'm just saying like they're so expensive, and
Yeah, look what's
this
happening in the industry with like the layoffs
this
and stuff.
industry can't
Yeah.
sustain it. Like there is
They got to figure something
project,
out.
yeah, like they got to figure out their project management crisis, and then they got to figure out like these budgets are out of control. But anyways, um, the first one that comes to mind, and I'm actually kind of shocked that the last entry wasn't a Metroidvania
Oh.
because it feels like the game was built for it. It's Kid Icarus.
Ah.
Because like Kid Icarus, Game Boy, and Myth and Monsters basically was a Metroidvania. It was technically the first Metroidvania I ever played. Um, Kid Icarus on an NES, not really a Metroidvania, not really. The dungeons you get to them, and they're kind of a Metroidvania when you get to the dungeons, but like they're really not. They're level based. But like the Game Boy one was actually kind of a Metroidvania, and then there was the 3DS one, and it was just a carpal tunnel speedrun game. So I know people really liked it, and I know there's like a lot of people who are like, break, they want to see like sort of a remaster or upres of Kid Icarus Uprising. But I'm like, Kid Icarus feels like such a prime, perfect Metroidvania. And I even go to keep it sort of Nintendo. I'd even go a little crazier. What could be interesting as if you had a neat twist on it. What if there was an Ice Climbers Metroidvania, but it was like co-op? And the whole point of the game was like co-op, like sort of do a sort of take it takes two, a way out, something where it's like you got to play with a friend maybe, and it's like you have to do things in tandem, or just like to fully complete the game you have to play co-op with someone, something like that. Like to me, like doing something with Ice Climbers as a Metroidvania would be a good thing, because like I mean otherwise the game it's basically a mobile game at this point. It's basically the precursor to Doodle Jump or something. But like taking Ice Climbers, as an IP and just like actually really turning it into a full-on Metroidvania, I think that could actually be kind of interesting, especially if you tackled it at a co-op angle, because there aren't really a lot of co-op focused Metroidvanias. I don't know. That is something to me that I think, that could be pretty cool.
Yeah, now you say that, I'm like, yeah, what is Hazel Light actually working on next? Joseph Ferris's studio. I mean, after It
Yeah,
Takes Two, it's like, I don't think they announced their new
I
game
thought he
yet.
did.
Am I getting Berenstein Baird here? Like I thought they announced a project. I don't know if it had like a project name or something, but I'm on their
Yeah.
R Games page and just has It Takes Two. Like news, maybe it's under news. But anyway, the point is like if there's someone who's gonna tackle it, Tale of Two Brothers remake was the last thing, right? That's the
Yeah.
last thing
That's
that's coming out. If they are I mean, they obviously are probably working on a new project. It might not be this, but man, I think they would be one of the studios best equipped to try something as ambitious as this, because I
mhm.
feel like you need to make it all or nothing. It needs to be all co-op. No, like I play by myself and there's a bot who takes over. Like that's
Mm.
not going to work. I feel like that it has to be designed from the ground up with co-op if you're going to do that. And
I mean,
so
it
I'd
would
love to see it.
be, yeah, it would be kind of a big ask, I guess, but it would also be kind of crazy because like you'd love to see someone with Nintendo's art direction or whatever from that level of polish go in and really like really tackle a 2D co-op only Metroidvania style game. So that's definitely one thing right there that I think could be a lot of fun. Um Those are two right off the top of my head. I'm like, hey, here's some digging like some old things out of the dusty toy box in Nintendo's attic of forgotten IPs.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean anything to bring Kid Icarus back, and it does feel like if they don't want to commit like a big budget to it. I mean, Nintendo is very good about having projects that are like lower budget in general, but having like much smaller scale projects that they still come out as
I mean,
quality games. Kid
when you really think
Icarus
about
should
it,
get a
yeah,
shot.
like Nintendo very rarely does big budget games. Besides, like they do Zelda, and you get your Mario Odysseys every so often. They probably spend a decent chunk on Animal Crossing and maybe Mario Kart, maybe. But like, I feel like Nintendo's way better about like figuring out how to maximize the potential of a game, and not spend 100, 200, 500 million dollars on the project. So it's kind of interesting in a way there where it's like, you know, it was interesting how Nintendo one year at E3, RIP, announces Metroid Dread as their big game. It was a surprise to everyone, and it came out. It was only coming out a few months after they announced it, and it was kind of like the winner of the show that year. And it was technically a 2D Metroid. It was made with polygons and all that, and it was a very polished, nice looking game. But Metroid Dread coming out and being like the big game of the show one year, and it's kind of like it kind of really shows you in a way like if you have a really good idea and you present it well, like I think people can latch onto it. I
Yeah.
don't know. Prince of Persia, I think, was just sort of like an unfortunate timing where it's like it's being announced in the midst of the remake not happening or going through
Oh,
this
for its
development.
reception, yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
absolutely that people were just like, "You're announcing a new game when you came and get the remake of Stand." That was definitely the reason why people it was like a trust issue. They're like, "How dare you announce a new game when you can't even get out this other game?" Which seems like from outside looking in, everyone's like, "That how is that hard? How are you like taking so many remakes and remasters are coming out left and right? What's going on?" And you're Ubisoft, like what? Like it
Yeah.
just spoke to maybe like troubled management, other issues going on at Ubisoft, in the last few years. It's like people had trust issues with Ubisoft. And so announcing a whole brand new project, it's like, man, like this like doesn't like not a lot of confidence. But as people got hands on, as more came out, it's like, okay, like this is better. Like maybe ditch Stands of Time remake and put all the resources into more of this stuff, like at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
well, the nice thing is that completely different studios, even when remake
Yeah.
got pulled from one studio to another studio, completely different studios making these
This is
projects. So
the
like
Rayman,
both can
right?
exist. Yeah, Montpellier made Lost Crown, so the Rayman devs. So it's I think it's cool when you have that because it's funny because it's funny how people get this weird mentality, like you said about like, hey, what happened to this game? How is this hard? Blah blah blah. And it's like, and yet you have all these different studios around the world, you know, pushing out an Assassin's Creed a year, and they were for a while, and then finally we started getting some breaks in between. But it's like, yeah, do you know, like, how like it's like Call of Duty, where it's like this is an Infinity Ward game, this is a Treyarch game, this is a Sledgehammer game, lead game, where it's just kind of like like they bounce studios to lead these games. It's okay to have more than one studio working on more than one game in said franchise. Like it's weird how like certain games kind of like people just don't know or just sort of like, yeah, I give it a pass, like whatever. Where it's like, yeah, multiple studios could be making multiple different versions of a game in a franchise, but then it was like for Prince of Persia, it was like this weird thing where it's like, well, what the heck happened to your Sands of Time remake? And I'm like, well, this is a different studio. They're doing a different thing. Like, can we not have both? Like, is that really so
Yeah.
bad?
I mean, yeah, there were like a lot of like, cancellations and issues going on there. We had like that. You had what's the state of like Beyond Good and Evil 2? We had
That game doesn't
I know,
exist.
we had the Immortal sequel cancellation revealed, that they were working on the sequel to that. And it's like, oh, well, that first one wasn't that bad. And like, man, so like they're, canceling things left and right. And, we're seeing industry trends of people, doubling
Oh
down
my
on like
god, yeah. At first, I was thinking you were talking about that EA game, like the Morals of Avium or
no
whatever.
Phoenix
Then I was
Rising.
like, Phoenix Rising, and then it hit me, and then I remember that because it was supposed to be a
Yeah.
Polynesian themed thing, and I was like, everything that came out about that game sounded so awesome, and it was just kind of like heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah. So I mean, there was a lot of like trust issues there. But but going back to like King Icarus, like yeah, that would be a great one because that series deserves like a new shot. Like people bring up like Star Fox, Wave Race, like those already had like pretty good like solid entries and more, and even like Wave Race, I think like 64, is very beloved. Whereas
Mhm.
Kid Icarus, like you'll say people who love Uprising or love the original, but like it's definitely not, it's like definitely a little bit
It-
more forgotten outside of
yeah,
like
it's
Smash
had
Brothers
three
is yeah, it's
games.
like Smash
Yeah.
Brothers is the game like people know mostly for Kid Icarus nowadays, for Pit, Dark Pit, and Palutena. But it's something that would be great to see them try. And I think you're right. I think it would lend itself pretty well to that already. And Nintendo already has some, good studios there that they could just do on their own. Um,
Mhm.
Speaking of like Nintendo, this came up a little bit on the first episode of Solo Q. I was with Rebecca Stone, Forest Minish. We were talking about like the future of linear Zelda and like bringing back like old style of Zeldas, despite Anima's insistence that future ones are going to be open air. We don't need to get in that, but one idea that came up is like some old school Zelda games are already kind of in the direction of Metroidvania, like they're like Metroidvania light-esque. So could they make an
Yeah.
old school Zelda that just goes full like the
Hey man,
it's like full blown Metroidvania, but like in a Zelda way?
Koizumi was trying back on the N64, if you're aware of all of that. But it's like no game in the history of games has ever needed a remake as badly as Zelda 2 does. Because I don't really like Zelda 2 as it is, but I feel Zelda 2 it has the absolute blueprint for an incredible game. But the hardware wasn't there yet. It wasn't ready. I feel like I honestly feel like a Zelda 2. I mean, I know people like Zelda has this weird thing where it's like the older a game gets, the more beloved it gets. But like, it wouldn't have carried the stigma it did for as long as it did if it came out on the Super NES. If it played like Symphony of the Night, had that like tight of controls or something, Zelda 2 would be an absolute classic. And it wouldn't be like going through the dungeons wouldn't be an assault on the eyeballs with like the bright glowing repeating bricks sprites for all the backgrounds and stuff. Like just being able to like differentiate two rooms, in Zelda 2. Like it really could no game in the history of games needed this remake as badly as Zelda 2 did because like if you even went crazier, went up, up the combat even more, gave Link more abilities than he already has in Zelda 2. Like Zelda 2 is ahead of its time. I argue too far ahead of its time because the cool stuff it was trying to do was not really feasible maybe on the hardware it was on. And so if you had at least 16-bit or dare I say now modern gaming, equivalent of hardware, Zelda 2 could be amazing. Because like the blueprint for that game is great. It needs better hardware. It's like sometimes you could dedicate a whole episode to like games that are great, but they are actually hindered by the hardware they're on. Like heck, even the original Star Fox and Star Fox 2, these are great classic games, but like, I mean, it does die. Like there are certain points where like, we're not even hitting 5 frames anymore, boys.
Yeah.
Like it's
So
just
Zelda
just what would it be like overclocked?
Yeah, Zelda 2. I mean, yeah, your point about Zelda 2, I think is pretty true. It could have been better, and if it came out at a later time, it might have been better. But sticking with the framework of like making a Metroidvania, I mean that works because of like the side scrolling nature of the majority of the combat. Obviously, the
Mhm.
overworld map portions could be reworked. So like that, like I think is like one of the more analogous games that if they wanted to like do a reimagining, like a complete retooling of Zelda 2 and bring it back, that would be a great one. Um, I want to ask you though, like I want to get more challenging. I want to ask you about like what about top-down 2D Zelda and like an Ocarina 3D style Zelda? Could you see, would you want to see one of those do like the 3D one's the big question
Yeah.
I think about a 3D Metroidvania Zelda? Would you like to see that? Do you think it could be done
Yeah,
well?
actually, it could be like having like it's sort of like one general area where rather because like Zelda usually is like hub world, and then it branches off and into these are the other like kind of like areas. You go over here, you solve this dilemma, go to this dungeon on this basically branch or the spoke from this wheel. But like doing a 3D Metroidvania style Zelda where it's like Link is in one large area and it has multiple zones in this one large area, but it is one sort of big interconnected Swiss cheese block of a level design. That actually could be very cool. I'm probably with you where I'm like, I'm worried that they'd ever do something like that because they've made so much damn money with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Like, why would they ever not make this again? Like, it doesn't matter how long Tears took to come out. Like, it's made so much damn money. Like, why would they ever stop doing this? And it's almost, I mean, Nintendo's one of those companies who isn't, they're as susceptible as money as anyone's, but they would be the one who normally you would think, yeah, but they'll do spin-offs. But it's like their side games have just been remakes and remasters. It would be nice to actually. Then there's a problem inherently with remakes and remasters, and Link's Awakening is like my favorite game of all time, and like we got a remake and I just walked right through it because there was nothing actually new. There's very little new. Well, very little. There's more heart pieces, and there was that pointless dungeon creator, which you could only share through Amiibo. I was like,
yeah, they shut down Zelda Dungeon Maker 2. Like, I don't know if you saw that.
So it would be nice to actually get something like that where you take something that's sort of super beloved and known, because unfortunately that's kind of where you have to go a little bit right now. Because again, just looking at that crazy reception, because Prince of Persia is kind of like a sort of more known franchise, and so when they announced a 2D Metroidvania for Prince of Persia, there was a little bit of pushback just because it's never been a Metroidvania. Like everyone was kind of expecting a remake or an Assassin's Creed, which is unfair, but I kind of get that in a sense where it's, and the thing is also if you dive into the indie space, it's there are a sea of Metroidvanias.
Yeah.
Because for like arguably the majority of indie games being a thing, they've been making Metroidvanias. So it is kind of like there's no lack of Metroidvanias, especially in the indie space.
Yeah.
But when you talk about like the major publisher space, yeah, it's kind of Nintendo and now Ubisoft. And there's been some things. Like, I don't know if a lot of people realize this. About 10 years ago, Capcom rebooted Strider as a Metroidvania.
Yep.
And it was actually very good. It was actually a pretty good Metroidvania.
We call it Struder here at Easy Allies, by the way.
Struder?
Because the original logo looks like it's spelled Struder instead of Strider.
But it was actually a pretty good, well-received game. But a lot of people just kind of for whatever reason, I mean, I think it did okay, sales-wise, actually. It probably did better than all the other Striders. But yeah, like it was a solid little Metroidvania. And it was like, wow, what a great idea. But Strider, like it kind of like fits the whole, talking point here. I'm like, what's a franchise that could come back? And Strider did it. And I'm like, Strider was was Prince of Persia before Prince of Persia. Like a really good example of taking this sort of like older, kind of like not, kind of unused IP and then just making a Metroidvania out of it. And that was a really good call. So yeah, it's kind of easy to sort of like, when you think about it, just take a game that's already a 2D platformer in some way and then just slap Metroidvania on it. I think it's more interesting in a way where you take a game that's never been that and then you make it a Metroidvania.
I feel like I need to maybe replay Strider again, Simmons, because I did review that back in the day for game trailers. I was like, chat might have heard the jingle from our game trailers review for a split second. I gave it a 6.4 out of 10.
I didn't beat it. I played about
I might need to
half.
replay
I was like,
it.
hey, this is pretty good.
Yeah, maybe I need to replay it.
I do not remember disliking it. I remember actually thinking, hey, this is pretty good. Hey, that's pretty good. But yeah, like taking a game though that's like take a game that's never been 2D Metroidvania. Even better. What's a 3D franchise? Like a franchise that's never been 2D.
So I have one. Well, it's been
just sort of like
It's kind of hard to find one that's never been 2D. That like, I mean, they're obviously newer franchises. Obviously, are like generally start as 3D. A lot of them, but like legacy franchises, it's hard because the other one I wanted to ask about that is more modernly known for being 3D, especially for the last like probably 25 years. It's been 3D, and they probably this would be good to maybe reinvent it to bring it back because, but I do see a lot of hurdles. Most notoriously, or probably the most prominent issue is certain someone no longer at this company, and thus fans would be kind of outraged or upset if you tried to make another entry. And it's from Konami, and it's not Castlevania, Metal Gear, because I think some of like Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3 are kind of already a little bit like Metroidvania because you do backtrack and go through some of those older areas as you know it is story driven, but Metal Gear Solid 1 specifically, Metal Gear Solid 2, like the big shell part, man, you are like constantly going back as you like get, it's like the key cards though. But imagine if they had like, gear, like, they would start working in gear or maybe abilities or like that. And like in stealth, it's not working in like stealth like that. And I think they could just redo it, like start it as something new. So you don't have to worry about like the attachment to the rest of the series and do something like that. Again, I understand no Kojima is like probably the biggest red flag, but you're not trying to make something that's literally a continuation of Metal Gear Solid. This is something completely different. And if you want to keep that franchise around, maybe this is like take the shot. Like
Ghost Babel, I don't think is canon. And I always say I'm always a champion for Ghost Babel. Ghost Babel is the most amazing Game Boy Color game no one played. It's really darn good. That's kind of like that's like a good example of something where I'm just like, just take something that's like way out of people's mind share and just be like, well, what if you made a Metroidvania out of it? I always thought it would be amazing if Konami did a thing where I don't know if you remember this. This is a really weird, obscure thing, but this is what inspired it. Way back in the day on the Game Boy Advance, they did a Crash Bandicoot meets Spyro game series where it was like Crash Purple, Spyro Orange. And it was supposed to be how like the two franchises were mixing and matching.
Forget if I remember this or not. Yeah.
So my idea was like, I wonder if Konami would ever be interested in doing a Castlevania meets Contra thing, where they do the big 1999 War of 99 event or whatever. And it's basically like the governments of the world decide to get together and like nuke Dracula. So they send in not Bill and Ted, but Bill and whoever from Contra. And so you have like two different games made by two different teams where it's like, okay, so the Contra dudes, Bill and Lance are going to go through Castlevania just mowing it down. So you have like this Contra in Horrorland game. And then you have someone like Soma Cruz, or not Soma Cruz, the Belmont who actually killed Dracula in 99. I forget his name. He was in Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow.
Forget.
He had the beard. The guy with the beard. But have that guy, he would be in a sort of more Contra-esque alien
Julius Juiced or whatever. He's in the anime, the most recent one, right?
I don't know. Julius Belmont. Have him in a more like natural environment / alien creepy environment. He's dealing with something else when Contra's dealing with Castlevania. Anyways, I thought, hey, wouldn't that be kind of a cool idea? And then wouldn't it be kind of a cool idea to try to mix and match a Metroidvania with run and gun mechanics?
Ooh.
I don't know. It might be a little too much. I don't know how you. I don't know how you would actually do it, but I always thought, that would be kind of fun, wouldn't it? Like, to have a Contra meets Castlevania.
I think it'd be cool. Like, remember all like the base levels of Contra 2, like going into like a base, like it could just be like a giant like compound too, like that. Mixing that up and stuff. Like someone. So I want to say like someone mentioned Shadow Complex for like spy like actiony Metroidvania. That I forgot about that one. That was so long ago. But yeah, they like this is something I think like mixing crossing genres like this to and blending them into this could be something very unique and it could work. I mean, honestly, when it comes to Konami, I just want to see them just try anything, man. Just keep your games coming back. And like, because we're still waiting for those Silent Hill games from Konami. It's like, are those going to be any good? It's like,
and you were bringing up like Capcom stuff, and I'm like, how mad would people be if they announced a new Onimusha and it was a Metroidvania?
I don't think
Like a
anyone would be too terribly
like
mad.
like a Metroidvania in like a big Japanese cursed castle full of all kinds of
I
yokai
want
and
to, yeah.
oni and stuff.
I don't think he's around right now. I literally would just like message Huber right now and be like, 'cause you remember what's that game they announced? It's not Onimusha that looks like Onimusha. That
Path of the Goddess or
yeah,
something.
and like Huber was getting all excited because that was Onimusha because he like wants more Onimusha. So if I could like if I could go hold Huber and be like, Huber, would you want a Metroidvania Onimusha? Would you be excited? Yes or no? If he says yes, I feel like generally people will be like, cool, Onimusha is like we'll take it
Yeah,
as a Metroidvania.
not a 3D Metroidvania. I mean, like a 2D.
Yeah,
I mean, it can be made with polygons, but I mean, like
side scroll. It's side
a
scrolling. Yeah.
side-scrolling Prince of Persia, Lost Crowns, Metroid Dread style Onimusha. How would people feel about that? I feel like that's kind of like there's a good test, where it's like, okay, this is a franchise. It's kind of well liked. I mean, I say kind of because like it sold decently in its time, but like it's been gone for a long time. But it'd be a good test to see, like, okay, well, what if we brought Onimusha back as a Metroidvania? How would people feel about that? Um,
Yeah.
would that be something people could get behind? Um, just as a 2D Onimusha with like cool samurai moves, and I don't know, it feels like that's something that could definitely happen. It is, it's also funny is something kind of avoiding here, or not avoiding, but just sort of ignoring is like there's so many Sony IPs that have
Oh,
basically been abandoned at this point. And like imagine taking either a currently it's being made and flourishing, or just a sort of one of their many abandoned big Sony IPs and making a
I
Metroidvania out of it. It could work.
yeah, I have one for that for my list. I do want to give a shout out to chat. Rayman 1090 suggested God of War earlier because it just had that DLC that was roguelike, not light,
Hmm.
roguelike because it has no continuing things that Huber's been playing that and like loves it. You know, this free update that gives you like a
Hmm.
totally new game mode. But like could God of War already hack slash type game that could translate to side scrolling like
Very, very
very easy. I
easily.
think that's very obvious and easy, but I also think like Santa Monica Studio could do like a very good job. You know, they give it the quality it deserves. But to more forgotten and fall into the wayside series, the one I want to pick, you're gonna bring it back because is Gravity Rush. I'd love to see like
Mm.
Cat and like the gravity manipulation powers in a side-scrolling Metroidvania with like big and like 2D environments.
Yeah.
That could be
Yeah.
pretty sick. I feel like.
Yeah. That's not even that old. That's PS4,
Yeah, but
man.
it's like they're not making any more.
They can make it a movie.
They're making a movie. I don't. That one image made me like scream of like horror. I'm like, what am I? I like it was all blurry. Maybe I need to see it clear. But I was like, oh god, why is this live action? What are you
I have
doing?
no idea why they're doing a live action
I
movie
know
for Gravity
why.
Rush. Like, but
Why?
well, okay. Why are they doing live action for Zelda? I know it's off top. Why are they doing live action for
Don't
Zelda?
know.
Why? Why?
It's
Why? I mean,
Sony. It's Avi Arad. It's like I
well, I
don't.
mean, congrats, Timothy Chalamet. I'm glad you're getting more work, but like,
Uh,
why? Why?
no. What other Zelda? Sorry, Zelda. What other Sony long forgotten series were you thinking
Hmm.
of? Yeah.
Well, I was actually thinking more like maybe even trying to dig way into their past, like PS1, PS2 era, even.
What do you got?
You know,
You got something in mind?
well, not
Okay.
necessarily like great in mind, but I was like, they had their mascot era, right? Like Sly Cooper seems like it could definitely be like game for a pretty decent Metroidvania. I don't know. Like I was thinking back, to Jack, Sly, Ratchet, that era.
Yeah. So yeah, like I was
Um,
gonna ask you, do you mean Slide? Do you mean like Ratchet and Clank possibly? I mean,
yeah. How,
even
how
though it's
about a
not.
how about a weird one? Mark of Cree.
Oh wow, Mark of Cree.
Well, think about it, like a pretty violent, but like, because like a really violent, combat heavy Metroidvania with a like a was Mark. Oh, I forget exactly where. I was gonna say it's not necessarily Polynesian, but like but either way, like Mark of Cree, Rise of the Kasai, or whatever.
Yeah, it's Polynesian
Um,
inspired. If you were
it is
asking, yeah.
Polynesian. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I was right. just think about that, like a really cool, violent, because that's what Market Cree was. It was violent. It was Metroidvania in that setting, which really, to my knowledge, unless there's an indie game out there, I don't really think has been really utilized in a Metroidvania setting much. So that could be pretty cool, I think. Of course, you'd have to try to find someone who even remembers that franchise exists, but um, there's one where it's just kind of like, hey, we have this really weird, crazy idea. Let's do it. Um, so yeah. Like, I mean, I always feel bad because I feel like I keep digging into like the way into the past. So I'm like, am I showing my age too much here?
I mean, but that's the thing. Like when people keep clamoring for something to come back and like to make a modern version of what they were, especially like they were RPGs, those are big budget. Or if you make
Mhm.
them like lower budget, it's like it's very dicey if those do well. It feels like outside of like a handful of like known quantities, like any Square Enix team Osno developed like 2D
Mhm.
HD 2D or like Nihon Falcom like games, maybe like who still make those types of like retro looking but modern, 3D but paying homage to the past type RPGs. It's like yeah, like these don't generally like Square Enix has released a ton of them like in the last like over a year ago, and like
Yeah.
they all fell under the radar. It's like that's the problem. Like you either don't make them as like high budget enough that they stand out anymore, and people maybe really didn't want what they were asking for.
I mean, I
So
think Square's problem was the fact that they just shoved so many of them out during the same month. It was like, here's 5 games in March, here's 10 games in October, November. I'm like, why are you releasing them all at the same time, dude? What?
yeah, like
Like
Valkyrie, like that Valkyrie profile was like the the one, what was it called, the one they put out,
Valkyrie Elysium.
Elysium, yeah, like that.
I beat it. I actually
Yeah.
beat that game. That game, it's ugly, but the combat's really good in that game. So if you can get it on the cheap, I say it's an easy
Uh,
recommendation for me, just because, like, look, it's got Salil, who are ex Ninja Gaiden devs. So all the ex Ninja Gaiden people cooked on the combat on the game. It's ugly as heck, and the story is whatever. Nobody cares. But like the combat is actually like legit in that game. It's actually kind of sad because I'm like, man, it's so ugly, but it's so fun to play. So
yeah. I
yeah, and it's it mentioned here in your chat. Rygar, yes,
Okay,
Rygar would be
Rygar is another good
Rygar
one.
would be a
Yeah.
perfect Metroidvania.
Oh yeah. That would absolutely fit the model to a T. Yeah, I mean, some of the ones that like I wonder like they're still making, like it's not Sony anymore, but like Crash. We already got Crash 4. They made the multiplayer game that we tried out.
Mhm.
That's like it's fun, but like it died because they didn't make it free to play. I mean, they charged too much for it. But
Yeah.
like could Crash, but like like people are saying with like was it Ratchet and Clank or Jack and Daxter, saying like the open level nature designs. Someone in chat said like that's kind of like the point and that's why they thrive, but also like yeah, that's what they're known for, but maybe that's the whole point of reimagining. Like it could
Well,
work as a Metroidvania.
I mean, I don't even think any of them are really thriving, and it's like in
Mm.
in in Ratchet's barely hanging on, honestly.
For Sly, it
Like
was Rayman for Sly Cooper. Sorry, I apologize. They said for Sly
yeah.
Cooper. Sorry.
Well, that's the thing is like that's sort of like the sort of deal no deal, or like, so the hypothetical here is you have a franchise that's for all intents and purposes like Sly Cooper dead, because Sucker Punch long done with it. Sanzaru, or whoever the other one who did some of the other Sly Cooper games, I don't even know. They're done with it, if they're even still in business anymore. I don't know. It's been 5 minutes. I'm sure another studio shut down. Um, so there are games that even though their franchises technically are beloved, so to speak, but like no one's making anything for it. So they're all intents and purposes just dead. And it's like, would having a sort of mid to lower
Oh,
budget
Sanzara did
Metroid.
Asgard's Wrath too. They're doing VR games for uh Oculus or whatever,
Oh well,
whatever. Yeah, whatever it is.
they'll be closed within a year or two. Um,
Sorry, someone in chat said I had just double checked for them. Yeah, it's so that's what they're doing now.
if that's all they're doing, and RAP in
And mobile
advance.
games, yeah, and mobile games.
Well, all right, I will remember you. So it's like, for all intents and purposes, like, just there's franchises that are cool and great and whatever, but they're kind of dead for various reasons. Usually, like Sony just doesn't want to do it because it's not a sad dad walking simulator of some sort that they can dump $300 million into. So, yeah, like this is where I'm like, well, wouldn't you rather have some games, a Metroidvania game, low budget Metroidvania game, like sort of like keeps the torch, keeps
Okay.
the flame going for a franchise rather than not having the franchise at all, even if it kind of was known for something else.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like we're getting a little derailed, but I think your point stands. For some of those, like if that was a new way forward for them to be like relevant again and ensure multiple sequels are coming. I mean, I also this comes up, so I'm going to give a shout out to Huber again. Huber is a big proponent of when a new entry or for a series or a type of genre we haven't seen an entry in a long time comes out, and it's like a swimming in sevens as we call it. He feels like that's good enough because, like, man, if we waited a decade plus and like we weren't getting anything, I'd rather take a swimming in sevens that like I can enjoy and I know what it is than nothing at all. So I could see the viewpoint. Sometimes people just like, well, if you're gonna do that, then just give me another middling game of that, that thing. But the problem comes budget and sales. What's the incentive for the company to keep doing that? Whereas like if like Sly, Ratchet, Jack, whatever it is, they decide to make a new game that's a different genre and it is lower budget possibly, but it sells well, so like it's financially it makes a lot of sense. They are now more incentivized to keep making follow-ups of that. So that would be my counter argument for someone like
the
Huber.
thing is though, unless you're COD or one of Madden, FIFA, or maybe Assassin's Creed, how many franchises can withstand weathering the storm of swimming in sevens? Because this happened to Jack and Daxter. There was a game after Naughty Dog, Lost Frontier. I don't remember who developed it, but it was that was the quintessential swimming in sevens game, and it just straight up murdered the franchise because nobody wanted a middling, less good but old style Jack and Daxter. Nobody wanted a less good 3D platformer Jack and Daxter. So I don't know. Like I feel like that's treading dangerous water to swim in sevens to keep the whole water analogy going here. So I don't know because Prince of Persia is a swimming in eights and nines.
Yeah, the new one. Yeah,
that's kind of what you want here. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about here is more like bringing something back that's going to be good and well received and it has an easier path to being more critically acclaimed than just here's a less good 3D Jack and Daxter.
Yeah. Raymond also pointed out like Sackboy went to a 3D platformer, like went just embrace that rather than trying to do a Little Big Planet franchise anymore. Even changing names and not even like spin off to something even different and maybe that can keep going is another idea.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is like because like Little Big Planet, that controlled horribly, but it was a Mario Maker, it was a game creation tool, and then the actual mechanics were kind of but then they just made an actual real game out of it, and it was actually better for it. That's a good thing where it's just like take something that, and that's something we really don't see in the industry a lot of. It's just like something that was weak but got better. Assassin's Creed kind of is that though, strange enough, because like most people would not say Assassin's Creed 1 was their favorite or the best.
Oh,
like
no.
2 is where it got going, like really got going. Like heck, even old games like Mega Man, like 1 is good, but like 2 is obviously better.
You said the magic word, but I know about before, like that is the big one. Sorry, I know we were talking about this point, but like, and there's all this Metroidvania talk. One of the most obvious franchises to just like fully embrace that and like go in is Mega Man. Like Mega Man, like
I feel like wasn't one of the Zeros.
Yes,
kind of
they kind of already have had this. Like it's gone in that direction. I don't understand why they don't just like go in, like lean fully into that and like bring it back. Like bring back we did 11. We've done classic Mega Man. It's like they won't do X. They refuse to like make a new entry in the X series. It's like they do all these collections, and it's like, can you just like it just screams like Mega Man, your future is Metroidvania. Like Your Mega Man, the words Mega or Man should be a part of Metroidvania somewhere. Like in some alternate timeline, they did fully embrace that and went that direction at some point in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And Mega Man's like spoken in the same breath as Castlevania and Metroid right now. But like, it's a series that we're like, is it dead? Is it coming back? When's a new entry? Like,
I don't know, man. Have you
yeah.
ever seen a company sort of like hate its original mascot as much as Capcom does for Mega Man, where they're just kind of like they canceled all their, like, Inafune left, canceled all their projects, years in limbo. Here's 11. It's the best selling Mega Man game we've ever had. Are we gonna do any more? No.
Yeah.
Here's a mobile game. Leave me alone. Like,
That one's the biggest the crime to me is that Mega Man
it's just-
has this beautiful future ahead where it embraces Metroidvania as a 2D
there's a
side
lot of
scrolling,
ways.
and it's like,
A lot of ways they could go with it. Metroidvania is the most obvious one, and they just don't care.
yeah, it's like, imagine, like, it just screams it, like the blueprint is just like, it feels like that is the most natural evolution of like Mega Man's like level based design is like, okay, now you just start interconnecting stuff, and it is a that's it. Like, someone already beat, like, that's all they did. They looked at Mega Man like, what if we just made this all seamless world? That's Metroidvania. It's like, you go to do the robots in different orders, get their powers, and like use their powers. Like, you can go through the levels, but if you have a power, it's easier to go through like, that was it. I'm like, Capcom, how did you not put that together after you saw other competition doing that? Like, yeah, like, yes, the first Zero game was a Metroidvania. Integrates,
That's what I remember.
yeah, it's
from what I remember
integrates,
about
yeah.
it.
Like, get integrates. Capcom just like, get them on that. Like, let's go. Like, where's my new Mega Man?
I don't know. Like, man, like they're holding, like, it feels like there's a grudge there with Capcom and Mega Man. But like, it may not even be a grudge. I mean, honestly, and I have to point this out to people all the time, like on my stream, where I'm like, go to Capcom's website because they list their million sellers. They list their 100+ games that have sold 1 million copies. There's like 3 or 4 Mega Man games, and one of them's a collection. So it's like you have Mega Man 2, like Battle Network 3, Mega Man X, and Mega Man 11. And none of them cracked 2 million. And I think the best is Mega Man 11. It's like 1.5 million. Of every game they've ever made, ever, of all time, their best-selling Mega Man was 1.5 million. Let me just put this in perspective. Every Xenoblade has outsold every Mega Man game, except X, but nobody cares about X. Just to put that in perspective, let me show you how down the totem pole sales of Mega Man are. So, which is probably why Capcom doesn't make Mega Man, because I can make a crappy Resident Evil and sell 5 million copies easy, or I can make a Mega Man game and maybe squeak to 1.5 at my best.
100.
And that's just sort of like maybe that's just the sort of reasoning why. But it's a terrible reasoning because, like, nobody's asking. I don't think any Mega Man fan in the world, well, maybe there's a couple, but like, I don't think anyone in Mega Man is asking for $100 million budget Mega Man.
Exactly. Yeah. No
Like,
one's
they like we just want a Mega Man game that's probably going to cost in the tens of millions of dollars, not the hundreds. You know, it could be low tens even, whatever. Just a nice X9, you know, a 05, you know, a 12 even. 12 would be kind of like, yeah, had a lot of classic Mega Man, but like, either way, and then of course a Metroidvania Mega Man. Like, nobody wants like a huge thing, and it's like, if done right, you know, promoted well, like, you know, you could break that, that ceiling that it's under. But like, yeah, Capcom and Mega Man's like this sort of like love-hate relationship they have with each other, where it's like, you know, it seems like such an easy, obvious get for a Metroidvania, or even for just anything. And Capcom doesn't want to do it because, well, frankly, they don't sell anywhere close to their other franchises that they currently make games for. So it's like,
yeah.
it's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Poor Mega Man. Just bring him back. Yeah, I do see chat pointing out a few other ones, like some of those, like Resident Evil's already thriving. Like, we don't really need to see it reinvented. And I saw some people in chat also mention, like, we've been talking about like Metroidvania is not the topic of this, but like roguelites have become another popular option for like in the indie scene especially. Like, and now you're seeing bigger companies adopt them. As we said, like God of War, Ragnarok, Valhalla, you know, did roguelike, not light, but like roguelites, you know, whether they carry over.
Mega Man's also primed for that.
Yeah,
honestly.
Like Mega Man could, yeah. So I was getting at the chat. Someone in chat said Mega Man could also work as that. You know, other games could like work as that too. And I think like even Prince of Persia could have worked like that as well easily. Like Hades, I'm like make a Hades style game like with Prince of Persia, like it kind of fits, that like, writes itself. So yeah, I think Metroidvania is like the popular right now. Roguelite is like right behind it. Squids is pointing out Splatoon DLC coming soon is 2 is a roguelike. So I mean
That makes sense from that username.
yeah. So I mean, those are probably the two popular kind of like styles genres right now, and it would be nice to see like long dormant stuff like come back that way. I mean, Metroidvania seems to be like the one that's like more well known, more well received. I feel like sorry, not well received, like easily digestible. But like roguelite, I think is a little bit newer for some people. It's something that people tend to like put more time into.
I
Yeah.
think roguelike stuff has a bit of a cautionary tale, I feel, where it's like uh, this you don't want this can get burned out real easy. Let's not all rush rush to the everyone doing roguelike now. Everyone. I'm like, it's cool. And part of me is just kind of like, yeah, these are cool. That's great. Like maybe let's not like let's not like burn the genre out just because like
Yeah.
we've discovered it, so so I'm like part of me is a little bit like this is cool, but I almost worry if everyone rushes to do it that like you burn the genre out way too fast,
Yeah.
which is weird because Metroidvania's got this weird sort of like
It's more evergreen. I feel like
evergreen,
because it's an
yeah, like
earlier genres kind of get the benefit of that we've had them for so long, they're so prevalent, we know them, we don't get burnt out by them per se, unless like that genre is like the dominant genre for like a few years. Like when every game
yeah.
became like a 3D or a third person or first person shooter for a while, it's like, all right, we're kind of sick of FPSs. Can we like move on to like why is
Yeah.
everything FPS? But like, yeah, you're right. Roguelite, I think, is a little harder to digest for some people. So if too many move to it, I think it is a genre that isn't as, I don't know if resilient's the right word. That's not the right word. Like it gets saturated to like more easily, I think is the word I'm going for, than other genres. And I think people get burnt out on it a little bit quicker than other genres would be my
Yeah, I
opinion.
just because like you remember you remember the days you were there way back in the day. Remember when World War II shooters were kind of everywhere,
Yep.
and then COD 4 came out, and everyone was really just excited for COD 4 because it
Yep.
was we're finally going to the modern era.
Yep.
Nobody wanted to make a modern era shooter.
Yep.
COD like that seems so far away now because now everything's a modern
Everything's
shooter.
a
Like
modern shooter.
nobody makes World War II games anymore.
Yeah.
So and the thing was is like the industry thoroughly killed and buried that genre, that subgenre, because barely anyone make any first-person shooters in World War II anymore. And when they do, it's just sort of like a one-off, like, oh yeah, nostalgic, like, hey, remember this? Yeah, we'll make one of these.
Well,
By
Sorry, Sarah Knight wasn't Battlefield 1 was World War 1, right?
one,
Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, I
World
don't
War
like
One,
not as many games are set during World War 1. That's for
yeah,
sure.
like
Yeah.
well, like hardly any, and then.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where like yeah, like the industry like rushed to World War II shooters so hard and fast they darn near burned the subgenre to the ground. And that's where I think my fear kind of comes in for roguelikes a bit, where I'm just kind of like, everyone's doing it. I'm like, are we sure we should all be rushing in at the same time? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's sort of just a little bit of fear because Metroidvania is kind of like it's so broad and there's so much wiggle room you have within a game that is technically a Metroidvania that like you don't need to really worry about like because roguelike is basically like it's repetition, it's like
Yeah.
the sort of the like repeat the same kind of thing with the gambling mechanic at the end of every room by room by room, and mentally I get done with them. Like Vampire Survivors, great, and then I got to a point where I'd kind of seen just about all there really was to see that.
How many hours would you estimate that was, Simmons? Because I'm kind of curious. I have a
I think it
inside joke
was
coming up here in a second.
I think it was around 15.
Okay, you said, and I thought you were gonna say 50, because Huber, when we talk about Vampire Survivors, Huber is like, yeah, I love that game, but I just got so repetitive, I got burnt out at 50 hours, 50. And I'm like,
Oh no,
Huber, it's 50 hours. What are you talking about?
Mine was literally somewhere between 8 to 15.
Okay.
Roughly. And
Okay.
then like because I did the big boss, I saw the ending, credits rolled, and then it was just kind of like, yeah, there's like a couple other things you could try to do, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. it,
Oh.
it has like just and then just walk away happy, having a good experience.
Yeah, I put in like 50 plus hours into the base game plus the first DLC, but there's so much DLC coming out. I have not jumped back in since the first DLC. I'm like, all right, I played this. Like, I had my fill. And I think if you could play a game for 50 hours, it's
Mhm.
pretty damn good. Like, it's like
There,
you're good.
I don't know what the genre is, but like you saw a couple copycats try to come out real fast, and even with more budget for Among Us. And I played Among Us
Oh
for
yeah.
about a weekend or two, and I was done. And I have nothing against Among Us, but like that, whatever that genre is, the sort of werewolf, I you know, the game with the real life game of werewolf version, the digital version of that Among Us is, it's cool, but like when anytime we see one of these directs or presentations and you see like a new sort of, I don't know what the genre is called, a new Among Us, like I'm just like, no, I don't care. Like I played one and I have like zero desire to play any more Among Us, and I don't have any desire to play any game like Among Us. Like it was cool, it was a novel concept. I'm done.
Hmm.
Like that was like cool, done. Don't need to play any more about it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, deductive crowd game, something, I don't know what you would call it.
Well,
Just
it's like those like it's like group shared like it like there's that Among Us. There was Phasmophobia. Now there's Lethal Company, like where you're playing as a small group. You're
see,
like
Lethal Company's not Among Us though. Lethal
it's no, they're
Company
not. But like
is,
the point I'm trying to make is that I feel your enjoyment of these games is hinders as much on like what the game's trying to do as much as the company you are with. And I think Among
yeah,
Us, the most popular things Among Us is like for more like social people who like to engage. They felt like the gameplay loop was fun, and the people they were playing with were probably very conducive to making it a fun time. I think like if you people you play with aren't as into it or kind of like check out at a certain point, it makes it like less fun for a game like
yeah,
Among Us. So if you have people who are really into it, they love it. It's that type of thing. For some people, like a lot of people, obviously who've been playing it, that's like the like great. They love it. It keeps going. But like I feel like that's like that kind of like small group experience with those
hmm,
types of games. It largely depends on the crowd you're with. Like I hate Lethal Company's gameplay loop. I hate it. I have no interest in it. But the only reason I play is because I love arguing with Don. I trolling him about NFL stuff when we're playing because it's just too easy to troll him about the Eagles every time we're playing and getting him on
hey,
NFL
hey,
conspiracy
hey,
theories. And
hey,
it's like, yes, let's
hey,
go.
leave the Eagles alone.
Uh-oh, we're gonna get Simmons and Don together. All right,
Leave the Eagles
I
alone.
gotta get Simmons and Don together for an Eagles episode now. This is absolutely happening.
Are they out of the playoffs?
Yeah, they lost. They got destroyed.
They were losing so much, I just stopped paying attention. It was too painful.
Don thinks the NFL is out to get the Eagles all the time. He thinks there's a conspiracy theory amongst the executives to punish the Eagles.
Bounty Gate 2.0.
Yeah.
And Sean Payton's the real mastermind behind there because someone said something mean to him at like a Eagles and Saints game at some point. I'm sorry,
Jeez.
that is way too that is way too sporty.
Yeah.
Sports volley.
Well, that's something to maybe look forward to down the road. I'll see if he has maybe any interest to like come on for a segment for that. But yeah, that I think that's gonna like maybe do it for this episode. We've kind of exhausted the series going to Metroidvanias. We talked a good amount about like Prince of Persia, Lost Crown. Yeah, before we wrap up, was there anything else you wanted to say? Otherwise, you could just let our viewers and listeners know where they could check out more of your stuff if they want to follow you.
Yeah, I'm on. I mean, on Twitter, you just Doom Assist Me at Doom Assist Me, and then Twitch is reverses twitch.tv/assist me Doom. I run the youtube.com/slash YoVideoGames channel. Which find a lot of Lethal Company there right now because we got into some shenanigans and hijinks with the YoVideoGames crew there. So yeah, that's going on again. Like if you're real into Xenoblade and JRPGs, you can check out my stream because every Monday I am playing a Monolith Soft game. And basically I usually have to play Xenoblades to recover from playing their earlier, lesser, hard to play works that somehow have a fandom and a following. I don't know. Did you ever play the Cross Zone games? They're terrible.
Oh, I played the first one, Project Cross Zone, the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I either reviewed it or I played a bunch of game trailers, and it's like, oh look, the novelty of spamming buttons to do these funny looking combos. Like, oh yeah, these are I know these side scrolling battle systems. These look familiar. It's like, holy shit, why is this game like 100 hours or some shit? I'm out.
100
I'm
hours,
out.
yeah.
I'm out.
Just awful. Two is technically better than one, but I mean they're just the same thing. They're so bad. It's the characters you want in the game you don't.
Yeah, that's
But
always been for those crossovers of those of Capcom, Bandai, Sega. It's like, just make the game we want. Stop beating around the
yeah,
bush.
just make it a fighting game. Come
Yeah, come
on.
on.
So there you go. There's your other topic. What game series should be a fighting game?
Yeah, we'll do
Or
that.
what two companies should cross over? When is our Kellogg's versus Capcom happening?
That will
So
absolutely happen for sure. But yeah, anything else? Are you good?
yeah, I mean, we're sort of in this sort of like avalanche right now of like Tekken 8 and Yakuza 8 and Grand Blue coming and Persona 3 Reloaded and then Rebirth coming and so we're in we're lucky we got through Prince of Persia. We're lucky,
It was a
there wasn't.
good time. They snuck it in right at the beginning. I think that was the smart move to get it in before and just after last year's onslaught and right before the start of this one. Like, they found that window. Like, they lucked out with that, I think,
Yeah.
for sure.
So yeah, we're in an avalanche right now. So we'll check out our channels, and I'm sure you'll find us playing one of those games.
That is very true. Yeah, look forward to some of that coverage maybe coming up as well. But yeah, thank you again, Simmons, for joining me.
Oh yeah,
Pleasure.
no, my pleasure.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Fun chat. And yeah, we will be back. I'll let you know if we'll be back next week. Generally, again, new show, solo queue. We're trying to do it on weekends. I have another topic lined up. I just need to see the guest. It's good to go. But yeah, every Saturday or Sunday, we might try and move it to like a more specific time and day potentially, and try and go with that. Whether that's more valuable versus keep moving it around. But give us in the comments. Let us know the feedback if you are okay with it being on either day as long as it's a weekend and the afternoon, or do you want us to lock down a day and time and like settle on that? Just let me know. But yeah, thanks again everyone for watching and listening, and until next time, have a great week everyone, and see you soon.
Later.